All right, just before we get started, I want to tell you about the Shopify app I think a lot of growing brands should know about, and it's called Plitix. Now, Plitix is a multi-store AI bulk editor that makes managing product content on Shopify actually scalable. Now, after 6 years inside Shopify and running my own brand, I really wish that a tool like this had been around back then. Because once your catalog gets serious, Shopify alone starts to break down. Like, try a simple find and replace across your product descriptions. You'll end up exporting to a spreadsheet, making the change, and then importing back just to update one phrase. And multiply that across translations and variants and even missing meta fields, and then you've burned a week. Especially if you've got like 1,000 or more SKUs or you're adding 50 or more products a month. Now, I've known about Plitix for a while, but I didn't think much of them for Shopify. But recently, I took another look, and they're now laser focused on Shopify-specific problems and helping brands adopt what they call content-led growth. And that means like better product content drives more discoverability and better sales across Shopify, marketplaces, and the incredibly important and emerging world of AI shopping. And their credentials in the ecosystem are real too. They are the #1 product information management software, or PIM, on G2, 5 years running, and are now ranked the #4 for best commerce software this year alone. So if your team is losing hours on manual product edits, grab Plitix app for free in the Shopify App Store, or you can head on over to plitix.com/fastlane. That's PLYTIX.com/fastlane. All right, let's jump into today's episode. All right, well, welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I'm your host, Steve Hutt. Now, today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about something that maybe sounds like a legal topic, but I'd argue that it's a little bit more of a growth topic, and I'm hoping by the end of this conversation that you would agree with me. I've done a little bit of research in this area, and it's happened to a few brands that I used to manage at Shopify, and we might get into those kind of case studies a little bit later. But I'm going to give you the setup first. Let's say, a lot of people listening right now, they're spending years building something real. Like, we're talking like a product that works, or, a brand that people trust, even your listings that, and these are converting listings that you have. And somewhere along the way, other people potentially start making money off things that you have built. Like, literally, we're talking like unauthorized sellers potentially that are undercutting maybe your pricing that you have set up, or even the worst part, I believe, maybe it's both are pretty bad, but having copycats that really like clone your product and your imagery, and doing some research on this, like brands literally are losing so much money, like it'd be 15-20% or more of the revenue is actually being lost because of all of this fraud that's going on. And a lot of brands don't even realize it's happening. And so that's why I have my guest on the show today. It's Mario, and he's from a company called ESQgo. It's ESQgo.com. What's interesting about Mario is that he is the founding attorney of this law firm, but it's interesting though because he works exclusively with e-commerce brands. I think started way back in 2018, I believe. But here's why I wanted to have him on the show today, because before Mario ever practiced law, he actually built and sold 2 7-figure brands on Amazon. So he's approaching it from a different angle. Like, there's this brand protection lawyer side, but then there's also the other side of it too. And I think he approaches it more like an operator trying to recover revenue. And so, his whole argument, from what I understand, is kind of enforcing your IP might be the least sexy kind of growth strategy in e-commerce, but it's probably the highest ROI one. So hello, Mario. Welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a great intro. I appreciate it.
I'm hired, right?
You're hired.
So let's talk about the origin story, because I'm always excited about, when someone builds a brand while you're in law school, I understand. Can you kind of take me back? Like, what did you experience maybe as a seller that made you think that maybe the legal industry is kind of like failing these kind of e-commerce founders?
Yeah, so I started my first Amazon brand when I was in my second year of law school. And at that time, Steve, everyone in law school was going out, getting internships, getting legal jobs. And again, I wasn't very attracted to that. I was like, you know what? There's more I could do. I don't want to go work for free. And at the time that when I started law school, I was a bit older. I was in my early 30s.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go look for something else because I've always been in business. I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And I came across this YouTube video by Daniel Moran talking about doing private label on Amazon and all of that. And I said, this looks very, very attractive. So placed my first order, and the first thing that I ordered was a strawberry stem remover. And it was that, and also the 3-in-1 avocado sort of cutter, slicer, pitter, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I put it under my brand name. I had to talk to the manufacturer, had him go ahead and put the brand name on there, create the packaging, and had him ship it out to the port of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when it hit Amazon, when it finally arrived in Amazon, I was sitting in law school in a classroom listening to one of my professors, and I kept on refreshing my Seller Central, Amazon Seller Central dashboard, and sales were just coming in, and I was just sitting there doing nothing. And I remember at one point thinking, I'm probably making more money than the professor.
Yeah.
Right. and that's when I was like, okay, we've got something here. So expanded the brand, eventually created another one, and finally hit a point where I got maybe a little bit too cocky, Steve. And being in Los Angeles at the time, the city of LA was giving out reimbursements for any homeowner that would replace their lawn with artificial turf. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and order some artificial turf, and I'll go ahead and sell it. Seemed like a great opportunity, great idea.
Yeah.
Steve, I got the rolls, and it was just a nightmare. I couldn't sell it. Right? I had to list it on Craigslist and sort of just local bulletins around town and so forth. I was like, what am I doing? I've got this great business with Amazon, and now I'm sort of going around and delivering grass. I ended up selling just one roll of grass, and those rolls of grass stayed in the driveway for months. Yeah. Finally, one morning, I'm having my morning coffee, looking at these rolls, just thinking to myself, Mario, this was the dumbest move you ever made. and I came up with the idea, hey, what if we cut these up and make these into doormats? I was like, there's nothing out there like that. So I went to the local Home Depot, grabbed a few guys, and I said, go ahead and cut these. I wanted cut into 18 inches by 24 inches. Mm-hmm. And they're looking at me like, okay, like you seem a bit crazy, but fine, let's do it. So they cut it, and this was not a perfect product, as you could imagine, Steve. I mean, the cuts were not straight. I mean, my packaging were poly bags that I had ordered from Uline. The sticker, the packaging I would put on there, I just printed on my local printer. It was not sexy at all, but it sold. It sold. We couldn't keep up with demand, and this is just on Amazon.
Yeah.
And finally, I called the manufacturer and said, hey, manufacturer, I need you guys to cut it into these pieces and sort of send it. And at the time, I had several sort of sizes and sort of dimensions. But the manufacturer rep told me, like, are you sure? He thought I was crazy, too, because this is a manufacturer that was making artificial turf for, like, FIFA stadiums.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, this is what I want you guys to do. And then had it nicely packaged and so forth. So that's going really well. But next thing that happens, I'm sure most of your audience can relate to it. When you've got a great product that's selling, we had copycats come in.
Right.
And manufacturers out of China started offering that on Alibaba and AliExpress 1688 too, right? Where it's like, hey, these are doormats. And I remember at the time I called, I was in law school, but again, I didn't have any IP classes. I didn't know how the real world worked,
right.
Or at least the legal world. So I called a few law firms and I talked to a few attorneys, and none of them understood e-commerce or what I was trying to do. I'm like, I just want to protect this product so no one else copies it. Mm-hmm. And some of them said, well, you could go ahead and sue. I'm like, well, how much is that going to cost? Well, they're like, you should budget at least $250,000. Steve, at the time I'm in law school, it's like $250,000. Like you could have told me $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And then as I sort of started expanding my brand, there was other issues that came up in the IP world. And can you still hear me, Steve?
Oh, yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah. Other issues came up, IP related, but primarily focused on Amazon and Walmart. And what I learned is these attorneys were great attorneys, very knowledgeable about intellectual property, but they weren't knowledgeable about how the marketplaces work, right? For example, like if you go to Amazon and draft this 30-page brief about how this other competitor is infringing on your trademark or your copyright or your patent, they're not going to accept it.
Right.
Because at the lower level, they're looking at those and spending maybe 5 to 10 seconds reviewing that complaint. If an attorney sends a 30-page brief, forget about it, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be automatically rejected. So it was the nuances there where it's like they didn't understand the language, the terminology we were using, but they also didn't understand the way the marketplaces works. So I felt like, you know what, this isn't going to work out. And I just sort of gave up and said, okay, there's no attorneys out there that really understand the marketplace and understand intellectual property. So when I sold my brands in 2018, I was like, that's what we're going to focus on. We started with intellectual property for e-commerce sellers. And that's what we've been doing since 2018 is helping brands and giving them someone that understands the marketplaces, has been an operator, has exited, and now is an attorney, right? Yeah. So that's what we offered, and that's what we've been doing. We've been growing ever since, and we've been blessed. We've been able to help a lot of brands, and I'm sure we could get into some more stories here about what situations we face and helped our clients. But that's a 5-minute overview of my backstory.
That's amazing. I love hearing origin stories. It's just, I don't know, just that's the stage, right? And everyone has a story to tell as to why they went down a certain journey. And it's great that you were an actual operator too yourself and it happened to you. And that's the pain in the marketplace, right? And then all of a sudden you can't afford traditional IP protection. And all of a sudden, okay, well, now what can we do? And so that's why ESQgo is out there, and that's why I wanted to have you on. I want to talk about another topic that I find interesting that you have labeled, and you call it like this invisible leak. And like again, and I think you can quote me if I'm wrong here, but you say that a lot like typical brands that you work with, you're finding that between 15 to even up to 25% of the revenue is unauthorized sellers and infringers that are taking revenue away from a brand. Can you walk me through that? Because like what I'm trying to figure out is like, where is that money actually going? And then why can't the founders see it?
Sure. So this is a scenario with unauthorized sellers. Most brands that are growing and below 5 million in revenue, they may not even have this issue. So I want to be very transparent.
Right.
This issue with unauthorized sellers appears whenever they start growing larger. And as a result, they may be selling in Walmart. They may be selling to brick and mortar stores. They may have retailers, right? So as your distribution channels expand, this problem occurs. And this problem, this is how it would look like. Steve, me and you have got a great brand. We sell pens. And we started selling to local brick and mortar stores. And we've got a distribution channel. Let's say we've got 50 or 25 distributors out there. Next thing we know is our Amazon listing or Walmart listing will have other offers from other people. So there's people out there, resellers, that go and buy from brick and mortar stores or online arbitrage. If you sell it cheaper on another website, they'll go ahead and buy it. And then go ahead and list it on Amazon on your offer as another listing, right? So now it's a fight for the buy box. And even if it's not for the buy box, assume you've got the buy box all the time. But there will be scenarios where you run out of inventory. Now guess what happens? That unauthorized seller is now in the buy box, right? Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to control what they sell it for. And you may be thinking, well, if at brick and mortar stores, I'm selling it for $10 and that's just a going price, that's where I sell it everywhere, fine. But we've seen scenarios where these hijackers, these unauthorized sellers may be using stolen credit cards, right? There's some other fraud that happens with it. On the extreme end, there's a criminal element to it too. So Now they're buying it for free. And even though you may be selling it for $10 or $20, maybe that's your map price, they're going to go ahead and outcompete you. So they're going to sell it for cheaper than you can. And guess who's going to get the revenue? These unauthorized sellers.
Right.
So that's one bucket. The other bucket are infringers, right?
Yeah.
Infringers, they're going to see your product. They're going to say, oh, that brand is doing pretty well. Let me go ahead and copy it. So they'll copy most of the IP assets you have, from the product images to the copywriting that you've done on your listing, to maybe even going to your manufacturer and saying, hey, I want the same thing. Can you go ahead and sell it? And if your manufacturer doesn't have a great moral compass, they're going to go ahead and offer it to them.
Right.
So that's the scenario that comes up.
Yeah, it's amazing. So there really are, I'd say it's two battles basically going on here with infringers versus like unauthorized sellers. It's such an interesting, but you have to be mindful of both. Is there any way for, let's say a brand that's kind of the sub $5 million and doesn't even realize, because I know that's not necessarily your wheelhouse, the sub five, but what would a early stage brand want to do? Are there AI tools that can import a catalog and scrape some of these things and just in real time try to figure out if in fact there is some infringement actually going on for their business? Because I think the challenge that I see is that people don't know what they don't know, especially sub 5 million in revenue.
Yeah. So it's not even starting with the actual search or monitoring, Steve. It comes down to the legal fundamentals. What they should have is a trademark in place, right? Yeah. That's a given. Okay. As soon as you think you're going to reach 1 million, or even at the beginning, go ahead and look at getting a trademark, right? That's step number one. Step number two is, if you're creating a new product and it maybe doesn't exist and somehow it's unique in the marketplace, talk to a patent attorney, talk to an IP attorney, see if you could go ahead and get some sort of patent around it, right? A patent itself, I know most patent attorneys hate it when I say this, but it sort of gives you a monopoly. It gives you a limited monopoly and says, hey, this is my design product. This is my invention. You can't go ahead and copy it, okay? And design patents cover the aesthetics of how it actually looks, where a utility patent covers how it functions, right? Okay. Utility patents may cost somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000. For some people, that's going to be too much. All right. What I would say is still look at investing it. If you've got the opportunity, if your patent attorney is telling you you need to get it, go ahead and really consider it, because it's going to give you a lot of leverage in the future. Also increase your market, your brand's enterprise value. Now, design patent that covers and protects the way the product looks, those are fairly cheap, around $2,000, $2,000 to $3,000, right? So get those. As long as you have the IP foundation in place, you should be okay for when you need to enforce it. That's step number one. Okay. Step number two, I would say, if you're going to be selling it to anyone, make sure you've got an attorney that understands the marketplaces and understands contracts for them to review your retailer agreements, your authorized supplier agreements, right? Yeah. So that's really where it starts. But going back to your question now, sub 5 million, they may not even have this issue. I don't want to make it seem like everyone's got this issue, right? Because sub 5 million, you may be the only distributor. You're not selling it to any other parties. You're the only one selling it. At that point, you've got a pretty good control of unauthorized sellers, because your product isn't floating out there in the market. But you may have infringers, right? And with infringers, usually if you're looking at your own product, sometimes taking a role of the customer, maybe once a month, once a quarter, spend some time looking for keywords that your customer or potential customer may be searching for, and you'll see if other infringing products show up, if other copycats show up. Okay.
It's interesting too when I think about brands going into Seller Central and stuff like that. I would think that these early stage brands that are on Amazon, they should probably take a look at potentially some pricing anomalies that could be happening, or even review patterns and things that are happening, because I think that's kind of an early kind of telltale sign that something interesting is going on that's maybe not necessarily in their favor.
So pricing is definitely one, but again, if you're sub 5 million. Usually you won't have that issue. Usually you've got a pretty good control. It's when you start growing. It's one of those growing pains,
I
right?
see.
New level, new devil.
Oh man, that's crazy. Now, how does the AI acceleration that's happening right now, like, because I think you said in a conversation that I kind of like, listened into one, and you said that fundamentally there's a lot of changes that are happening right now, like from 18 months ago, all because of AI. And it was interesting now is that, I guess what took these counterfeiters, these fraud people, weeks now literally takes minutes now. And so I'm just curious on your thought, if you can kind of walk me through like how these bad actors are using like AI now to clone brands like in this day and age.
Yeah. So I love AI. I think it's great, but it's
Yeah,
also a double-edged sword.
I know.
While it's helped brand owners, it's helped attorneys, it's helped law firms.
Right.
It's also helping the bad actors, right?
Yeah.
So previously, if a bad actor wanted to rip off your brand, they would have to go ahead and maybe use the same photo that you have on your listing and go ahead and copy the same copyright you have and sort of go ahead and create a new listing or create a new website, right? Nowadays, they could just go ahead and grab the photos that you have of your product and have AI modify it a bit to the point where if you go ahead and do a Google search on your own image, it won't find that other infringing product, right?
Right.
So it allows them to set up websites and create listings within minutes, where before it may take days or weeks. That's what's exploded. So now it's like we could go ahead and make a copy of your product and your website within a few minutes.
Mm,
So that's what's been amplified, is their ability to do more, to cause more damage. Right?
holy smokes.
There was one client, they sell adult gummies,
Okay.
and they had an infringer who took their listing and created a new Shopify website with it. The images were altered by AI, the copywriting was altered, all of that is altered. What they didn't do is go ahead and change the address and the phone number, so it still showed the phone number of our clients. So our client had people calling and saying, "Hey, I placed an order for your product, but I never received it."
Right.
And our client's looking through their database and saying, "You never placed an order with us." They're like, "What do you mean? I paid you guys. Here's the website." That's how they found out about this other website,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes it's clients calling it and sort of saying, "Hey, what the heck? Where's my order?" Or it's people that place an order on a website that's been created without your permission, and then they're like, "Okay, this was a horrible product,"
Right.
and they'll go ahead and go to your Amazon page, Amazon product, and leave a review there, right? And you're like, "Wait, I've checked the quality of my product, or my product
Yeah.
that doesn't describe my product at all." But now you've got a 1 star on Amazon for your product listing.
Oh my gosh.
So that's where it's like monitoring your feedback, your seller, not seller feedback, but product reviews would also be very wise.
Yeah. So I would say, a lot of people listening right now, let's suppose somebody, filed a trademark, but they probably, stick it in a drawer and, call it protection. But I really feel that it sounds like enforcement is actually probably a better growth lever overall. Like it's great to have this trademark, but if you're not doing anything with it and enforcing it, what's your thought process on that?
Look, in the IP world, there's trademarks, copyrights, and patents. Trademark is the only one that can last indefinitely.
Oh, I can't.
There's
Okay.
no expiration date on it, right?
Yeah.
Now, when do you need that trademark? I would say if you're above 5 million, contact our law firm, right? There's something we could do, which is a brand audit. We'll go ahead and see if there's any unauthorized sellers, any infringers, and how much they may be taken away from you, right? But that would be the first move. But that's where we use a trademark. There's a lot we could do with the trademark. And again, going back to what I said earlier, Steve, about someone that understands the marketplace, but also IP law, there's something called trademark material difference. And even if someone goes and buys the same exact product that you have, that you're selling, everything is the same, that could still be considered infringing. A lot of these resellers will rely on the first sale doctrine defense and say, "Steve, I'm not infringing because I bought the same product that you're selling. I just bought this from Whole Foods, or I bought this from Target or Walmart," right?
Right.
Now, there's ways that we could still go ahead and make that product that the unauthorized seller is selling be infringing through the trademark material difference. Material difference is just a legal concept that says, Steve, if your original product that you offer through your brand comes with a warranty or comes with pre-sale support or post-sale support, then any other reseller has to offer that. If they can't, then they would be infringing. So we could go ahead and help a client go ahead and set up guards there, which we call IP moats, right?
Okay.
Creating a moat around your brand where you have full control over your pricing, over who sells and who doesn't. It's a little bit more complicated than what I described, but that's a 10-second version of it.
Okay. What about internationalization? Because I'm in Canada, and I know Canada and U.S. Tend to, even though they are physically different countries, there's a general kind of rule that I believe, I'm not using the legalese here, but there is a rule that says, hey, we're going to at least understand and appreciate the other countries' kind of like frameworks. We're not complete idiots, that we understand that someone's infringing on something. But I also feel that there's going to be a lot of these bad actors are probably going to be in countries that are not very receptive to even wanting to accept, takedown notices. I've had enough DMCA takedown notices in Shopify for people cloning and copying all this stuff. What's your thought process around these actors that are hiding behind VPNs in countries that are just not, above board in certain cases?
Yeah, great question. So what we try to do is look at ROI, right? Coming from the operator perspective, if I'm talking to a brand owner, I'm like, okay, you may have 1 million infringers, but who's really doing the damage? We really don't want to spend legal time going after a listing or a website that sells 1 unit every 5 years, right? Yeah. And I think if you present it in that framing to any entrepreneur, any brand owner, they'll be like, yeah, let's focus on ROI. So with that said, let me go back to your question. On marketplaces, the number one revenue leak is usually Amazon and then Walmart, right? And it's usually inside the United States. Second to that, if they want to look at Canada, that's probably another area that we could look at for ROI. But trademark law is jurisdictional, meaning your trademark, if you have it in the U.S., it's only good in the U.S.
I see.
Doesn't matter if the infringer is from Canada but selling in the U.S. or they're from Africa or China selling in the U.S. We could still enforce it over here in the U.S., right? Now, good thing about Canada is the same law firm here in the United States that represents Amazon, we could also go to for their Amazon Canada listings, and they could also help, right?
I see, yeah.
But again, focus on ROI. Yeah. If the law firm you're talking to isn't talking about ROI and what you should be doing with respect to ROI, I think you need to talk to a new attorney.
All right, very cool. I want to talk about, you have this framework for brand enforcement. And I think it's a good call out right now to talk about why you've created this framework. There's an acronym around it, around both the IP infringement side and the copycat issues and things that happen. Can you talk about your framework that you've built, your trademarked framework, I might add, and I'm just curious about like what it is and and how it might be valuable for those brands that are above 5 million that are listening today. Mm-hmm.
So we took a completely different approach to brand enforcement, right? Okay. There's right now out in the market, there's brand enforcement agencies and there's litigation law firms. We've positioned ourselves right in the middle, but further differentiated ourselves. So let me explain the two other options out there. With brand enforcement agencies, Steve, they're just filing IP complaints on the marketplaces, right? So very shallow.
Yeah.
Now, on the other end, you've got litigation firms, kind of like the one that I mentioned earlier about my artificial turf doormats, where they'll say, okay, let's go after them, but you got to pay us $250,000 or 6 figures. That's what it's going to cost you because IP litigation is expensive. So we're like, you know what? There's a better option. Why can't we just enforce them on the marketplaces itself? And if ever the litigation is needed, then we can suggest it to the client and give them their options. And we've got a network of litigation firms across the nation, right? But enforcement agencies, too slow or too shallow, right? Mm-hmm. Where litigation firms are too slow. And both of them really don't have the marketplace expertise that I believe these brand owners deserve. So we came up with that as a first sort of way to differentiate ourselves and give clients what they really need. Second thing is, when we go after these infringers, we're not just looking at intellectual property law, which other people do, right? And sort of stop there. We're looking at intellectual property violations as the first pillar. Second pillar, we're looking at, okay, are they violating any policies? Because sometimes these marketplaces, for example, Amazon, sometimes it feels like, Steve, they care more about their own policies being violated than the actual damn law, right?
Yeah.
And then number three, any regulatory compliance issues, right?
Right.
Is this violator maybe also violating the FTC or FDA or Prop 65 here in California? So that's what we employ. But in addition to that, we said, okay, if we're going to be helping these brands stop the revenue loss today, why don't we also help them get set up with the foundation they need to go ahead and increase the value of their brand?
Right.
If they ever want to exit, now their brand is valued more. Because of the legal foundation we've put in with authorized distributor agreements, with the trademark material difference memorandum, keeping track of all of their authorized distributors, right? Giving them an IP gap analysis, like what other IP should you be looking at? What is missing in your portfolio? And what is the status of your current IP portfolio?
Yeah.
So we did all of that, and we're the only law firm that does brand enforcement, but also is concerned about how do we increase the brand equity, your enterprise's brand value for tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we did, and the results have been amazing. Our clients love this approach, and again, I created it putting myself as a client. If I could go back and represent myself, what would I like when I was thinking about the idea with the grass mats?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Like, there's going to be a lot of people listening right now that are, north of $5 million in revenue, and they're thinking, okay, how long am I going to run this puppy for? Am I going to run it to 20 million? As you know, the revenue goes up, so does the complexity.
Of course.
Typically. And, and if you think about it, these PE firms or aggregators or whatever, as you know, they're going to do their due diligence, and it's not just their earnings before, tax and depreciation and stuff. They're actually going to check to see if you have any moats, like defensibility around the business, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's really interesting. I think that's where you kind of fit into that. It's a very founder thinking. If you're going to looking to exit, I don't know, in a couple of years, 2 to 5 years from now, like imagine having enforceable kind of like IP portfolio that's actually built into your brand. So then when the company looks at it and they go, oh, okay, so you guys just aren't like a shiny widget selling tons of them. You actually are protecting that asset. Also, that's important to us, and that must raise the multiple for the exit.
Exactly. And keep in mind, not only have I exited 2 brands myself, but I've also helped dozens of our other clients go ahead and exit. So I've seen how PE firms look at businesses and brands, how aggregators look at it. And one of the things they look at is, okay, great, you make $1 million a month. But how do we know that that's going to be predictable? If we could show them the enforcement history and how we actually protect our IP and the moats we've built around their brand, obviously the multiple is going to go up.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But again, I've been part of several M&A transactions, and one of the first things that any buyer looks at is not just the revenue, but the quality of the revenue. How predictable is this going to be for the future? What's stopping another Chinese knockoff brand from coming in and sort of taking all of your revenue?
Yeah, this is amazing. Wow. It really is so eye-opening. So, like, if your sweet spot is these brands that are like north of $5 million just because they have product market fit and they're more apt to be copied as they grow, I guess there's 2 different trains of thought right now for those that are listening. If you're sub $5 million, let's talk about what you believe ESQgo can actually help with in that realm. And then we'll talk about what happens for those that have found or are soon to find out that a lot of revenue is being lost because of these copycats or infringers.
Sure. So if any of them have issues like this or just want to go ahead and say, hey, I'm just curious, my marketing department may have mentioned this before, and I know they said they're taking care of it.
Yeah.
Let me look at it, because it's not a marketing department problem, right?
Yeah.
A marketing department, I love you guys, and sometimes I know you guys could do a lot with very little, but this is more of a revenue/legal problem. Right.
Yeah.
So if any founder's looking at it like, hey, I need to sort of look into this, yeah, we could definitely step in, and within 24 hours, we'll have a good idea and give them a report as far as if they are losing any revenue and how much they are losing.
Okay. That's cool. And so that's this brand enforcement report you're talking about.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. And that's completely free.
Okay, that's awesome. And then so I'll make sure that I have a link in the show notes so people have access to that. And so that's irregardless of kind of where the business is today. If you're north or south of $5 million, there's still an opportunity to have this report done. Just open up some doors, I guess, just saying, hey, no, we don't believe that you're not at that level yet, or you have product market fit, but you're not really being infringed yet. But here, hey, maybe there's opportunity with either trademark or some other IP protection system that could get in place to kind of help mitigate those risks in the future.
Exactly. And something else I'm working on, Steve, for the sub 5 million group is a checklist as far as what you should be doing even before you contact an attorney. Right. Okay. And this just comes from experience. I was just working on that last night. I got that over to our marketing people, but that should be ready within the next, I want to say, 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, beautiful. I'll add that to the show notes. So it'll be part of this transcript right now. But yeah, so checklist for the sub 5 million. If you're north of $5 million, and it sounds like I'm having this brand enforcement report created, so you can just at least see where you you can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. Founders, marketers, they're wearing a lot of hats right now, and everybody's margin is squeezed, and they don't realize that there is, well, some do realize it. They just don't know how to deal with it. And then some don't know it's even happening, which I think is even worse. Not knowing that you're being copied and fraud happening against your brand. And so knowing that, I think that's where your report comes into the mix. So that's really cool.
Absolutely. And again, we look at brand enforcement as a revenue generator, right? Instead of looking at a new product to launch, let's first protect what you've already built.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Mario, this has been, whenever I have legal shows, and it's not really a legal show because it really is about profit maximization. And it's interesting because I've had other legal, kind of conversations on here about, setting up your corporation and your LLCs and all these different kind of, things from those sort of frameworks. This is different. These are companies that, and brands that already are on Amazon or on Shopify, and they're doing their thing, but they don't realize that, and we talked offline before recording that, the best form of flattery is plagiarism.
Yep.
And we joke about it, right? I mean, and the joke is that people they can steal from anybody, but they chose to steal from you.
Yes. You're special.
Right?
Yeah, you did something right.
Yeah, you did something right. So, all right, Mario, thanks again for recording today. Have yourself a lovely day, and everything will be in the show notes. And this has been really impactful.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right. Have yourself a great day. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.